Welcome back. It's Black Hat, it's Las Vegas, so it must be the Dark Reading News Desk. I'm Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading, and I am glad to welcome to the news desk both Casey Ellis, founder, chairman, and CTO of Bugcrowd, along with his colleague Dave Gerry, CEO of Bugcrowd. Gentlemen, thanks for taking some time to talk to us.
Thanks for having us here. This is awesome.
Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Casey, let's start with you.
Sure.
Talk about why crowdsourced cybersecurity is important and given today's threat landscape, and specifically how Bugcrowd fills the gaps there.
For sure. I mean, the reason it's important is that cybersecurity is fundamentally a human problem. Like technology just makes it go faster.
Sure.
You think about the idea of someone leaving their front door unlocked and someone else coming along and taking advantage of that. That predates the internet by a couple of thousand years at least, right? So what we've done is sped it up, and given that acceleration, given the fact that there's so much internet to protect at this point in time, you really need access to an army of allies to outsmart an army of adversaries and apply creativity into security gaps.
Right.
So what we do as an organization is basically plug in the incredible community of hackers that are out there that operate in good faith with all of the different problems that customers might have now and into the future as well.
Excellent. Bugcrowd has recently released a report titled "Inside the Mind of a Hacker." It's a provocative title.
It is.
Talk about some of the top findings and what you think it's important for cybersecurity professionals to know.
Yeah, so we had a focus on AI and machine learning. Like that's obviously topic du jour and something that has kind of been dumped on the collective, consciousness of the internet over the past 6 months or so. Two of the things that came back that were really interesting was 50% roughly of the hackers that we surveyed saying that AI was going to dramatically improve and actually kind of facilitate their ability to do their thing as a hacker. But at the same time, 72% of them said that they don't expect AI to replace human creativity at any point in the future, right? And I think the main reason for that is that we're all here because of a creative adversary. If we solve all these problems with AI, they're not going to pack up and go home. They're going to innovate past that, and this is where that kind of cat and mouse game comes into play. The other one that I really liked was the fact that there was a doubling of participation from people under 18. That's actually the first time that we've seen that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there anything in regard to the emerging idea of offensive security in the wake of so much AI technology that's enabling otherwise law-abiding and relatively benign end-user organizations taking the fight back to the attackers?
Yeah, definitely. That's really kind of the purpose of the crowd in the first place, is to actually counteract that. Right. So what they're doing and how they're using their tooling, the way that works and the way that we engage it and kind of unleash that creativity onto the demand side is basically because they're learning and trying all the same things. So the kind of tooling innovation that you see on the adversary side, the white hats are doing that too.
Well, I think too, that's where the value of the diversity of the crowd, right? You talked about
100%.
the fact that we see this young cohort that's growing and we're seeing this next generation of security talent come into the fold, and platforms like Bugcrowd are uniquely positioned to help with that, right? We give folks the outlet that they can legally do this, that they can learn new skills, that they can adapt. They realize they don't need a set of credentials. They don't need a university degree, right? They can come to us or come to other platforms like us and be able to learn and adapt and hone their skills that ultimately lead to incredibly rewarding careers and great livelihoods.
Sure. So let's talk more about that bug bounty issue. Dave Gerry, you wonder if you could address some of the challenges that T-Mobile was facing when they approached you seeking a bug bounty platform. What was it that led them ultimately to choose Bugcrowd?
So we're super excited to partner with T-Mobile. They were just at our booth recently doing a big announcement. We've got parties with them tonight. They're excited to engage with the hacker community and the researchers. And really it comes down to tapping into the ingenuity that exists within that group, right? We talk about our tagline, Ingenuity Unleashed. And that's really the creativity and the talent that exists in that hacker community. And T-Mobile has done a phenomenal job relaunching and rebuilding this bug bounty program. We're super excited to be a part of their journey. They're taking security incredibly seriously as an organization. They want this to be at the forefront of what they do. they believe and understand in the criticality of the customer data and all of the privacy issues that surround what we all do on our phones, right? If you think about everything that you do on your mobile device, it tells you a lot about who you are. You have health data, you have personal communication, you have conversations, right? Whatever else it may be. And they're really stepping up to the forefront of making sure that security is at the core of what they do and a core piece of the culture within the business. And that's been a big shift, right? As we've seen these organizations come on board, a bug bounty program isn't something that just exists and is one-off and it runs within the security organization. This is something that becomes part of the DNA and the culture of the business around actually soliciting and asking for feedback from this hacker community that if you think about 15 or 20 years ago, there wasn't even a security department, never mind raising your hand and saying, please come and get me and find these vulnerabilities. So that's really where folks like T-Mobile have come to us. They looked at another program, they had programs running, but ultimately they switched to Bugcrowd because they believe that we're the right partner as they rebuild and relaunch that program and they start to scale the program. I know you've been a big piece of this, Casey. Anything that you would add to that?
I love what you said there about the shift towards a culture of like understanding that vulnerabilities happen.
Right.
So as an organization, you do everything you can to prevent them. When you find them, you do everything you can to fix them as quickly as possible.
Sure.
But you also acknowledge the fact that humans write code and humans make mistakes. So like the fact that that's going to happen is kind of a product of human creativity as well.
Right.
Therefore, do everything you can to identify this stuff, shift it, and actually shift the cultural kind of perception of that to acceptance and moving forward on that to fix things up and preventing instead of not.
Yeah, Casey, say more about the components of a successful bug bounty program. What are some essentials there?
Yeah, well, payments for starters.
Well, that's always good. Yeah,
hackers want to get paid.
to get
Everyone's
paid.
got to eat. And I think in general, the way that works is that the more you offer from a payment standpoint, the more engagement you'll get, and generally the broader the bench you'll engage. So if you've got hard targets, a higher reward's appropriate. Second thing would be responsiveness. So when you receive a report, making sure you get back to people quickly. There's nothing worse as a security researcher than feeling like you're shouting into a black hole. The third thing is fairness. So just making sure that you're basically sticking to what you set out in your bounty brief so that when people engage, they're feeling like they're being treated fairly, and that builds trust in the program over time. So that's obviously the companies that run these programs, they need to do that themselves. That's a big part of what we help them with as Bugcrowd as well.
An organization like T-Mobile is an obvious choice to be doing a bug bounty kind of program. I'm wondering if there are other criteria that companies or organizations can look for to decide, should we be doing this or not? I mean, size, scale, reach, of course, are considerations. Are there other industry sectors or other considerations that make somebody well suited for a bug bounty program?
That's a really great question. I think what I would say is that these two ideas get confused often, but a vulnerability disclosure program, which is like a bug bounty program, but it's more of a neighborhood watch exercise. You're going out there and saying, hey, if you see something, say something. There isn't payments involved. You're not incentivizing that, but if something happens out there, people know how to get it to you. I think that everyone should be doing that. Like, we're at a point in time where that's being regulated, there's peer pressure on it, and I think it's an expectation of being on the internet, right? But with bug bounty programs, I think that really it comes down to the maturity of the organization to actually do something with the reports. Once they're in a position to actually receive that kind of input and act on it quickly, and act on it in a prioritized way. They're not kind of thrashing around any time a bug comes in. That's when you're ready to do it. And I think the journey to that oftentimes for our customers involves crawling, then walking, then running. Right? So we'll start off with a private program or even like a crowdsourced pen test. We'll run a VDP alongside that and then gradually kind of warm them up to the idea of a public bug bounty program as they evolve. And going back to even some of the stuff you said before around the cultural shifts, that's a part of it too.
Yeah, I think the culture plays a really big role, right? I mean, security has to be a core of who the organization is and who they want to become.
Right.
And they need to understand that it's okay to go slowly, right? We're never going to encourage a client to go all in on day one. We understand that, one, they need to have a successful security program in place. this is a part of the maturity as they continue to adapt and continue to grow, and we'll be with them every step of that way, right? We don't need it all to be on day one.
Yep, 100%.
Dave, real briefly, what are some of the key trends that you're really tracking these
Yeah.
days that both Black Hat attendees as well as folks who may be listening remotely need to be really mindful of?
Well, I think we've talked about a lot of them already, right? I think one of the big ones is the role that AI is going to continue to play in security, both on how do we help enable the defender to be more efficient, to be more productive, and also what is this going to mean from an adversary standpoint, and what does this then enable and empower them to go do, and how as an industry do we come together to put some guardrails around that, right? We're going to see a lot of that coming out of DEF CON later on this week, where there's going to be a lot around generative AI and how does that play a role in both the offensive and defensive side of security. We're really excited about the continued mix of diversity within the community that we see.
Yeah.
So from a hacker community standpoint, we're continuing to see that the metrics are getting better, both from an age perspective, from a geography perspective. We have a lot more work to do on the gender gap, so there's going to be something that as an organization we're committed to helping fix. It's going to take us time to get there, but that's something we're serious about. And then I think the last one is really around how we're seeing organizations want to tap into the hacker community. And that's something that still is a developing space, right? As we talked about earlier, never would have thought that this was going to happen. So we're seeing that that's coming to the forefront of how they're thinking about security, and they're seeing this as an opportunity to engage successfully, to get to know members of the community, to solicit help, and ultimately roll that into their program.
Yeah, I completely agree with the one thing that I would add to that as well is just a really accelerating kind of sense of interest in the policy side of all of this.
Right.
You know, the idea of like, we're talking about technology, we're talking about the acceleration of technology and securing it as it accelerates, but then there's this political landscape around it that moves a lot more slowly.
Sure.
So the idea of like, how can you make sure that you've got an environment where hackers that are operating in good faith feel safe to do that, and that the rules around that are clear. Yeah, that's something that, you know, we've been involved in as a company, that I've been involved in personally, as have a ton of others for a long time. But what's happening now is there's a new cohort of you know, hackers and security people that actually want to put their hand to the plow to make those things better as well, which is really cool to see. That wasn't always true.
Yeah,
It was
sure.
usually, you know, a couple of dozen nerds in a room and went from there. Now it's
All
rolling
right.
up.
Well, Casey and Dave, thank you so much for coming by the Dark Reading News Desk. Some great and fresh insights around the bug bounty space, as well as the shape of the threat landscape. Appreciate you joining us on the Dark Reading News Desk.
Thanks so much for having
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
A ton of fun.
We've been talking with Casey Ellis and Dave Gerry of Bugcrowd. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you soon.